All right, I'm going to admit it. I was wrong. If you've been paying attention to our YouTube channel or our podcast this week, I've said that I feel pretty confident that Brock Purdy would play for the 49ers in their week 3 game against the Arizona Cardinals because he returned to practice. And for me, um, I didn't really think that it would make sense for Brock Purdy to return to practice on the toe injury and do so without the intent of trying to play on Sunday. So Kyle Shanahan told reporters on Friday in his press conference that it was highly unlikely, and the words "highly unlikely" were the words that Shanahan used. He said, he was asked by our friend Nick Wagner what goes into that decision. Shanahan said, "We'll see how he does tomorrow," meaning Saturday. Just talking to him, I think it's highly unlikely that he'll start, but just trying to see where he's at to see if he could be a 2 or an emergency 3. So basically, the 49ers would have to make a bunch of different roster machinations with all the injuries they're dealing with in terms of promoting guys from the practice squad, including potential backup Adrian Martinez. Anyway, it's a whole complicated thing for the 49ers to bring up a third emergency quarterback off the practice squad, which is where Adrian Martinez is. They might need other practice squad spots because left guard Connor Colby is dealing with a groin injury that has him listed as questionable for the game, which means the 49ers might try to have Brock Purdy up as a backup quarterback, a number 2, so they don't have to use one of their promotional practice squad guys. I don't even know. That's not the right way to say it, but they won't have to promote one of their practice squad guys as their number 3 quarterback because they have injuries elsewhere on the roster, right? So the 49ers going into the game, Spencer Burford, their swing tackle, is out. He's dealing with a knee injury. Connor Colby questionable with a groin injury. That popped up on Thursday. He was a limited participant in Friday's practice. So we'll see about his status for Sunday. Juwan Jennings did not participate in practice all week. The 49ers list him with ankle and shoulder injuries. They list him as questionable. It doesn't seem like it's a great sign that he didn't participate in practice this week. So it looks like Mac Jones would be playing without one of the 49ers starting receivers. And of course, the receiving position has been super in flux um, throughout. And also, Jordan Watkins, rookie receiver who hasn't played this season, I believe it was a high ankle sprain he suffered in August. He had been out, but he returned to practice this week, was a full participant on Wednesday, was limited on Thursday, listed with a calf injury, and did not participate on Friday. Kyle Shanahan also said Jordan Watkins is a candidate not only to miss multiple weeks, but to potentially go on injured reserve. So where does that leave the 49ers? Well, obviously it leaves them with Mac Jones as their starting quarterback, presumably, and Mac Jones is coming off a game where he completed 26 of 39 for 279 yards through 3 touchdowns against the New Orleans Saints. I thought looked pretty good and played at a pretty reasonable level, all things considered. He's a backup quarterback. The 49ers receiving core, of course, has been banged up. You don't have George Kittle. You don't have Brandon Ayuk. Like those are pretty impressive numbers given the circumstances for Mac Jones. My point that I made, again, on the channel this week and on the podcast, I don't know how sustainable that type of performance is from Mac Jones, your backup quarterback, particularly going against a better defense like the Arizona Cardinals have. And so the Cardinals, for whatever reason, have always given the 49ers fits. I think particularly defensively, because Jonathan Gannon's scheme and being able to vary blitzes and challenge Kyle Shanahan's protection schemes just seem difficult. It always proves to be a difficult matchup for the 49ers. So you have Josh Sweat with the Cardinals this year. You have Baron Browning. You have Dalvin Tomlinson, who you remember we mentioned on the podcast last night, former Cleveland Brown, who gave the 49ers a ton of trouble when the 49ers lost in Cleveland a couple years ago. Calais Campbell is back playing at a high level. He's somebody who feels like he's always given the 49ers fits. So, and they have Budda Baker, of course, on the back end. And the 49ers are going into this game without Juwan Jennings, potentially, without George Kittle, without Brandon Ayuk, and now without Brock Purdy. So it's going to be a tough spot. Can the 49ers win? Absolutely. It's going to take another, I think, really strong game from Christian McCaffrey as a receiver, which we've seen the first 2 weeks. Christian McCaffrey, I think his biggest plays with the 49ers this year have been in the passing game, converting a fourth down in Seattle, getting that touchdown late in the first half in New Orleans, converting a third and long as a receiver matched up against a linebacker in New Orleans in the second half of that game. It just feels like Christian McCaffrey is helping the 49ers most right now as a receiver, more so than a running back. And again, the 49ers haven't been able to run the ball all that well. They're 25th in the NFL in yards before contact, and I think 29th in yards after contact, which to me, it seems like a product of a few different things, right? You don't have George Kittle. You haven't had him since the first quarter of week one. You haven't had Kyle Juszczyk, or at least you didn't have Kyle Juszczyk for most of the Saints game, and Kyle Juszczyk tends to block really well when you do have explosive runs. The Niners' longest run this season, I believe, has been 13 yards. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey, when he was rolling in an Offensive Player of the Year in 2023, it felt like he had a couple, 20-yard runs a game when the 49ers went to the Super Bowl that season. So the explosive plays through the running game haven't been there. Some of that schematics, but I do wonder if Christian McCaffrey isn't quite the same player now that he's a 29-year-old running back. So keeping an eye on Christian McCaffrey, again, his value in the passing game is immense. I'm not saying he's washed or over the hill at all. I just wonder if he's not the same explosive runner that he was a couple years ago. And that would certainly make sense given the fact that he had bilateral Achilles tendonitis last year and, a knee injury, PCL injury that caused him to miss a bunch of time. He only appeared in a handful of games last year. So he's just getting at that point in his career. But again, still immensely valuable to the 49ers because of what he offers them in the passing game. And that's going to be what Mac Jones is going to need if the 49ers are going to win. It's going to be a lot of Ricky Pearsall. It's going to be a lot of Christian McCaffrey, both in the running game and the passing game. So we'll see. But without Brock Purdy, I think it's a difficult game for the 49ers. It would have been a difficult game for the 49ers even with Brock Purdy. But Kyle Shanahan said on Friday, it's highly unlikely Brock Purdy is going to start. Would not rule out Brock Purdy being available as a backup. If I'm just editorializing and it's just my opinion, if Brock Purdy is healthy enough to be in uniform as a backup, I think he's probably healthy enough to start. So that's just my opinion. That's just where I'm coming from. I understand you don't want him to aggravate the injury and have a Joe Burrow situation and require surgery and miss, multiple months of the season. The Bengals season is basically done after 2 weeks with Joe Burrow needing surgery on that turf toe injury. Nobody really knows the extent to Brock Purdy's turf toe injury. I find it very telling that not only was he in running shoes last week, but he returned to practice this week. And if he has a chance to be in uniform on Sunday, even as a backup, if it's me, I'm starting him. Otherwise, if you're worried about him aggravating the injury, then just don't have him up in uniform at all. That's just my opinion. Anyway, so Niners Cardinals, Niners home opener will be a very interesting game. Cardinals 2-0, Niners 2-0. Assuming the Rams don't win in Philadelphia or against the Eagles, I actually don't know where that game is. But if the Eagles beat the Rams, the winner of Niners Cardinals will be 3-0 and in first place in the NFC West through 3 weeks. So, very interesting early season slate. Interesting development with Kyle Shanahan saying that Brock Purdy is highly unlikely to start. And so we will have to see if Mac Jones can get his second win of the year. If he does, kudos to him, man, and kudos to Kyle Shanahan. I think Kyle Shanahan's done a great job this year in terms of running the offense. I think the personnel hasn't been nearly as good as it has in years past. You mentioned Christian McCaffrey. The offensive line gives up a lot of pressure. Some of that is due to the quarterbacks holding on to the ball, but the Niners receivers, pass catchers don't separate at the level we're used to seeing, and they still have had a pretty efficient offense. So that's a credit to Kyle Shanahan. I think it's a credit to Kyle Shanahan to get Mac Jones to produce at the level that he did in New Orleans. And my question is about sustainability. Can Mac Jones continue to play at that level against a better defense in Arizona? Can Mac Jones play at a high level in situations where you're counting on him to beat good teams to get you to the playoffs? Because that's what the 49ers need to do. The 49ers need to win the NFC West. That's their obvious goal. They obviously can do that. It's obviously more difficult when you have a bunch of injuries, but that's the type of team they are. They are the type of team that should consider themselves contenders in the NFC West, get to the playoffs, see where things go. So that's what it'll be without Brock Purdy on Sunday. And they'll rely heavily on the defense. Niners defense, I think, has played well. A lot of young faces, a big challenge in Kyler Murray. Just corralling him, preventing him from making plays outside of structure. He's a guy who can draw a bunch of personal foul penalties with late hits and his late slides. He's just a difficult quarterback to contain within the pocket. So that'll be a challenge. D. Winters, Michael Williams, some of these younger guys. Can you prevent Kyler Murray from getting outside and making plays with his legs? Because if you can do that, the Cardinals have proven they've struggled to run the ball consistently. They haven't gotten Marvin Harrison Jr. going. They have Trey McBride, but not a whole lot else on offense. So if you can limit Kyler Murray, the 49ers could still have a shot to win a low-scoring game, I think. And it'll be a tough game. Not sure what to make of it. I felt a lot better about the 49ers' chances had Brock Purdy been available. Again, Kyle Shanahan says it's highly unlikely he's going to start. So should be a fun one. Keep it locked. Kyle and I will be back for a live show after the game on Sunday. We'll talk to you guys then.